Hi there. I wanted to spend a few minutes today talking about moral injury. Moral injury is defined as anything that happens to you or that you've seen or been involved in, which clashes strongly with your own moral code or is perhaps in conflict with your own ethical standards of what you believe to be right. It might seem that moral injury is a fairly new thing, but it's actually been around and recognised for hundreds of years, usually in the context of a military situation where soldiers have returned from a combat zone and experienced that kind of moral distress. However, anybody who's been working in a high stakes environment where there might be life or death decisions or situations can be vulnerable to experiencing moral injury, such as emergency services, care workers, aid workers, and indeed most people working in the National Health Service these days. There are three ways in which moral injury can occur, and I'm going to talk about the healthcare setting primarily here. First way it can happen is by acts of commission, where you've done something or witnessed something happening, say to a patient, that you feel is wrong. That might be something like a treatment or an intervention that's done to a patient where it's got no chance of success and may indeed be harmful to them. The second way is an act of omission, where you know that something should be done or should be given or a treatment should be started, for example, and it just doesn't happen. Or something like a patient being left on a trolley for hours on end rather than getting a bed that they need. The third way it can happen is through acts of betrayal, and that would be where you feel betrayed by those in senior management or leadership positions. Perhaps you've asked for help and it hasn't been forthcoming, or perhaps even been denied. So what about the impact of moral injury? This can be a little bit difficult to assess because the person affected by moral injury often doesn't want to talk about it. They might clam up. They might be feeling ashamed, maybe guilty even, or perhaps just angry about what has happened. But research in this area shows that moral injury can lead to further emotional and psychological distress and lead to things like presentism, emotionally withdrawn, even depression, and possibly even post-traumatic stress. So what can be done about moral injury? Well, arguably the most important thing is to try and make sense of what's happened, and a debrief of some kind might be useful after a particularly traumatic event. But also maybe having the opportunity to talk about what's happened rather than bottling thoughts and feelings up, whether that's with a trusted colleague or a friend or a partner, but just in some way having the opportunity to get that out and to talk about what's happened and what your thoughts and feelings are around that area. It's also maybe worth thinking about what you usually do in a stressful situation to try and get over it, whether that's maybe going for a walk in the fresh air or going for a run or going for a coffee with a friend or perhaps just going for a pint with your mate down the pub. But also worth remembering that you're experiencing a normal reaction to something that wasn't your fault. Anyway, that's all from me for now. If you'd like to hear more about my coaching work, please go to cjlightbuddycoaching.com. But in the meantime, thanks for listening and take care.